Welcome back to the Tavern, fellow adventurers. I'm Paul Pape, your barkeep and game master. And tonight we have a warrior who survived a devastating ambush as a child and now teaches others how to defend against it. So picture this, the Bankruptor, a shape-shifting demon that doesn't just steal your gold, it steals your carriages, your security, your family's dignity. One day you're riding in style, the next you're bumming rides from strangers. One day you have the latest and greatest, and next it's whatever we can get. This demon struck Christian Brim's family without warning. As a kid, he watched the Bankruptor tear through everything his family had built. But here's what makes this monster so insidious. It doesn't just take your treasure, it leaves behind a curse. Some people spend the rest of their lives terrified of money, hoarding every copper piece. Others pretend money doesn't matter and let the demon circle back for another strike. Christian did something different. He studied the beast, learned its patterns, discovered its weaknesses, and for years now, as CEO of Core Group and the host of the Profitable Creative podcast, he's been teaching creative entrepreneurs, videographers, photographers, agencies, makers, how to recognize the Bankruptor's early warning signs before it's too late. Because here's the truth, numbers tell a story. And if you don't learn to read that story, the Bankruptor will write the ending for you. Tonight, Christian's here to share the 3 sacred shields every creative entrepreneur needs to keep the Bankruptor at bay, and why managing your gold isn't selling out, it's the most creative act of survival. So Christian, welcome to the Tavern. Let's talk about the Bankruptor and how we slay it.
Paul, that was absolutely brilliant. I don't know if you've thought about being in theater or you do that recreationally, but you awfully, or a writer, maybe, a screenwriter. That was brilliant. I'm sorry, I forgot the question. Can you ask it again?
Yes, tell us about the Bankruptor and how we slay it. Or just introduce yourself. We can do that too.
Well, either way. So I too am a fellow traveler on this entrepreneurial journey, a little more aged and wise, I hope.
Wisdom, yes.
The Bankruptor is an insidious beast, and it's got a malintent, right? And it is persistent. It never goes away, right? I think the first thing you have to use to protect yourself from this beast is your mindset. And you kind of mentioned that curse. A lot of people, well, everyone comes to this adventure with beliefs that they've picked up along the way, mostly in childhood, but early adulthood as well. You learn and believe certain things about money. But I think the key thing there is, in the way you start to defend yourself against the Bankruptor, is you understand that they're just beliefs. They're not truths. Myths, if you will, all right? Stories told around a campfire, around by people that oftentimes don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. I remember one of the first books I read when I graduated from university with a degree in accounting. So I'm supposedly educated on the matter. One of the first books I read was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And I think it was published, this would have been 35 years ago. I think it was published right around then. But as I'm reading this book, it was extremely impactful because it started me to question some of the things that I thought I knew about money. And here I am, an educated professional. And the one that still sticks with me today is the belief. So he's not talking to business owners, right? He's talking to the general public. Have you read the book?
I have not. Nope.
I recommend it's foundational.
Yeah.
It is
Okay.
foundational. And it's easy and it's short and it's entertaining.
Nice.
He said one of the things that you've been taught is true, which is not true, is your home is your biggest asset. And he went through, and of course I had heard that, I believed that at the time. I think if you asked most homeowners out there, they would say, "Yeah, that's my biggest asset, right?" But the the way he described it is a little different than an accountant would have described it. He says an asset is something that makes you money. In other words, positive cash flow. That's all
Mm,
he's talking about. He's not talking about future value. He's talking about does it produce cash?
sure.
Uh, and a liability is one where there's cash outflow. Period. Right?
Right.
That's it. Now, I'm not saying that belief is more true than the accounting definition of an asset and a liability, but it was novel to me. I had never thought about it that way. And when you use that paradigm, your home is absolutely a liability because you write checks. Even if you pay for it, you still got to pay taxes on it. You still got to pay insurance on it, right? It's always a liability.
Mm,
Um, and it really got me thinking, right? And so that has been a lifelong journey. I still am learning about my own beliefs about money and how I use it. And so I
mm.
think that's the first step is really identifying what you believe about money and is it true or is it not true? Because in my family's case, my grandfather started this family business and he grew up his dad was the town drunk. There were three boys and they were feral in Pauls Valley, Oklahoma, raising themselves, right? Their mother abandoned them
Mm.
and he was broke. He was poor. And when he got money, he spent it all, right? And like it was in the moment. My father-in-law, as a counterpoint to that, grew up extremely poor, and he is still alive, and he has millions of dollars, and he um, will never be able to spend it all.
Hmm.
But what I find fascinating about it is that they both had the same similar experience, right? But their
Yep.
reaction to it was different. One was spend it if you got it because I want to enjoy it because I never had it. And the other was I've got to save everything and not spend any money because I'm afraid I'm going to run out. And there's not a correct response, right? But that's what you have to understand about yourself. Like what do you believe about money?
So what was the turning point for you, the moment you realized that you could help others defeat this beast instead of just running from those memories?
Well, it was a progression. I don't know that I would say that it was a point that I realized it. I just knew intuitively. I
Okay.
knew intuitively that there had to be a different way. And that was even while I was in college.
Mm,
And I'm like, I don't think it had to end that way. Was my thought. Um, my family was not the only one that was impacted by the oil bust. 80, 90% of the people that made money lost it, right?
right.
So what did the 10 or 20% do differently? There was one person I didn't know personally, but I knew from the story that he actually made more money in the oil bust going through and buying up all of the equipment
Yeah,
for pennies on the dollar
sure.
because he had money. He made more money in the bust than he did in the boom. Yeah, that's
Sure.
crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it started my wheels turning of like what was different about these people that they were able to thrive when others failed, and how to keep yourself from failing. And it was a process. When I graduated college, I took the traditional career path of a CPA, worked in public accounting. Then I went to work for one of my clients as a commercial banker, which was a great education, understanding the internal workings of commercial credit, underwriting, and those kind of things. Um, but at that point, I realized, I mean, I'm not going to tell you that I started my business in 1997 altruistically. I mean, like I did not. I did it because I wanted to make more money. I wanted to have more control over what was happening. Um, but the fire that burned that drove that passion was, I know I can help these people.
Mm.
Because as a banker, I'd see people bring in financial information, and it was like awful. And I'm
Yep.
like, we can do better than this.
So speaking of altruism, you work specifically with creative entrepreneurs, so like videographers, photographers, agencies, people building businesses around their craft. And I'm guessing that the
Mhm.
Bankruptor has some favorite ways to attack creative professionals specifically, patterns that you see over and over again. So what's the most dangerous blind spot creative entrepreneurs have that make them vulnerable to this demon? And what do they consistently miss that opens that door?
Well, the bankruptor is not like Beowulf. He's not this big shaggy creature that is huge and hideous, right?
Sure.
He's much more hiding in the shadows.
Hmm.
And so I think the biggest mistake creatives make is they think they can hide or ignore him, right?
Mm.
And they know that he's there. They know they have a problem, but they feel like they can just ignore it. Um, and they do ignore him for a while, but he doesn't go away. And if you stay in business long enough, he is going to attack. Like you can leave the game, but if you stay in the game, he's going to attack. And so I think that's the biggest thing is just stop ignoring the fact that you are financially illiterate and making that as an excuse of like, well, I'm not good with numbers. I don't need to know that. It's not going to affect me. It will, and it could even impact you in when you're successful. So you get to tax time, and oh well, you've got a $50,000 tax bill, and you're like, how in the hell did that happen?
Right.
And I don't have the money to pay for it, and that that causes a spiral, right?
Mm.
So don't think that just because you're actually making money that you're immune from it.
Right. And like they say, know thy enemy,
Mm.
and that's really a key thing here. And we talk about like it's really weird in the creative world because we talk about money as though it is evil. Like earning money
Mm.
makes us a sellout, spending money makes us, we don't pay enough attention to it. We're being too loose with the money, and so it just becomes this like evil entity, and we have to use it. I talk to so many creatives who are like, if we just go back to the barter system, we'd all be fine. And but that's just not where we're at. So I agree with you on that one. So you talk about how numbers tell a story, but for
Mm.
most creative entrepreneurs I work with, financial statements might as well be written in ancient runes. Okay, so they're wizards
Mhm.
at their craft, but profit and loss statements, cash flow projections, balance sheets, it's like trying to read a spell book in a language they never learn. But you've spent years translating these ancient scrolls for creative minds. So how do you make financial management actually make sense to someone whose brain is wired for imagery, design, and storytelling and not spreadsheets?
I need to come up with a translation, a shorthand, because I was in a my forum meeting with my entrepreneur peers just yesterday, and a non-creative entrepreneur was asking just that question. Like,
Oh,
I don't understand the terms. I don't understand, the mechanics. I don't. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, because I do understand the language, I'm like, You don't need to be an expert in the language. Like, you're asking all these questions that you really don't need to know the answer to. Like, it might be important for your accountant to know them, but you don't need to know them, right?
right.
I'll give you an example. Her statement was, well, We get these checks and they sit in the bank, in the safe until the bookkeeper can get around to recording them in QuickBooks, and then we deposit them. And it causes cash flow problems. And I'm like,
Sure.
that is literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, deposit the damn
Agreed.
check, right?
Correct.
And
There's
and
digital
then the
documentation everywhere. You can find
right,
it
yeah,
elsewhere.
exactly. I mean, um, but my point is, she was getting hung up on understanding the process or understanding the terms, and like, why did the bookkeeper need to be involved? Blah 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 blah. It reminds me of a fellow traveler that is a Hollywood producer and writer, of some note. Like, if I told you who he was, you and told you what he worked on, you'd know him. He admitted on my podcast, I think, I don't know. He said when and this was not early on, he'd been a traveler for a while, but he's having a conversation with some investors on a movie, and they were talking about a profit and loss. And he thought it was profit in lost,
Oh,
not profit and lost. But right, yeah. And so I think the reality is people are sometimes coming to this, and this is not a stupid person. This is not an unsuccessful person, right? It was just an unfamiliar term. Um, I think Profit First by McAllowitz is because a lot of people don't know this. Mike's not an accountant. He's an entrepreneur.
hmm.
And so he didn't develop this as an accountant. He developed this as something for himself because he wasn't getting what he needed from his accountants, and he was trying to figure out there's got to be a better way to do this. So he developed Profit First himself. So I recommend everybody to read that book as a primer because it does uber simplify the what you need to know. I'm not saying that's all you need to know, but it's a great place to start.
Excellent. Excellent. So, one of your core messages is entrepreneurship is hard, harder
Mm,
when you do it alone. But the
mm,
reality is, a lot of creative entrepreneurs are alone right now. There's solo photographers, freelance designers, one person studios fighting the bankruptor without a party. And they're
mhm,
doing the creative work and the bookkeeping and the marketing and trying to keep the
mhm.
beast from the door. For the creative warrior who literally is fighting solo right now, what's your advice? What's the first part of the financial battle that they should stop trying to handle alone?
Well, I think it's just that you need to get a party together. Stop trying to do it by yourself. I mean, the reality. I was actually thinking back about you, reflecting on our conversation and Dungeons and Dragons, and I remember when I was developing my first character, and I was thinking, well, I want, 99s on all of these attributes, right? Like,
Sure.
but the reality is that you only get to build them incrementally, and you
Mhm.
usually focus on one based upon your character class that, like, okay, you're going to have high strength, but your stamina may be low, right? And that is the reality that we live in. We can't be good at everything, right? So that's why you get in a group to help offset your weaknesses, right?
Yep.
You don't focus on your weakness. You don't try to improve your weakness. You
No.
lean into your strength and then
Mhm.
bring others around you to support where you're not good. Now, I'm not saying that you need to go get into a partnership with someone else. That's not what I'm saying. I think that you have to have resources, of which one should be a financial professional. I mean, you should not be trying to figure this out on your own. But the funny thing happens when you create a group, you start to think of it as, well, this isn't just a job. And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs, not just creative ones, get stuck is they just create a job for themselves. Which there's nothing wrong with that, especially if the alternative is to go to work for somebody else. And you know, I totally get that. But I think that the mind shift of going like, I want to build a business. I don't just want to build a job.
Mm.
That will require you to involve others. I mean,
Hmm.
you can't do it yourself.
Right.
I don't know if
Yeah.
I answered your question,
No,
but
you totally did. But I know a lot of entrepreneurs, as soon as you say, because that's advice I have given multiple times as well. And I talk about in Gamify Business, we talk about building your party and working off of your strengths and finding people to help boost your weaknesses to make a well-rounded party. We've talked about this before. But the very first thing they say to me is, I don't have the money to
mm,
hire a person to do this. Now, I know what my reaction is to that statement all the time, but I'm curious what yours is when somebody comes to you and says, I'm a solo person. I'm working quest to quest here. I don't know exactly how to, take money away from what gold I have to pay somebody else to do something that I'm muddling through, but still making it my own. So what's your answer to that one?
well, I think it boils down to you just don't understand the value, right? Like I totally understand, like I don't want to trade my gold for something that I don't think is worth it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But what you don't understand is that you're buying a potion. You're buying an enchanted sword.
Hmm.
You're going to level up, and that money you spend will actually be a multiplier that specifically with a financial professional. Like if you're paying for a competent financial professional, they should pay for themselves in multiples, two or three times what you pay them and the financial insight and planning, whether that's tax planning or business planning, insight into like what. I'll give you an example. One of our clients um, was a video production company, two-man video production company, and they came they came back and said, "Well, okay, we have this brilliant idea. Uh, our our margins are 50%. In other words, after their costs, they got 50% profit." And so we got our clients, our customers to prepay for a 6 month production, and we gave them a 50% discount for prepay. And I'm sitting there like, okay, explain this math to me. Like,
I'm trying to
right,
math myself here.
right. In their mind, it made clear sense. But when we walked them through it, it's like, okay, your margin is 50%. You just gave that up, meaning that you're not making any money. But here's the worst problem. You're only doing it for 6 months, not a full year. So the reality is you're actually going backwards. You're losing money, right? That is a prime example of how people make missteps in their business without competent financial advice, right?
Mm.
And I, I, I don't know how to explain the value other than anecdotally through stories of like this is really worth more than you think it's worth. But at the end of the day, um, maybe that's maybe that's our problem. Maybe we don't do a good enough job of explaining the value um, to potential customers because I know it's there, but yeah.
Well, that actually leads me to my next question, which is you mentioned you teach a money mindset that is not Dave Ramsey's version. And I'm really curious about this because so many creative entrepreneurs carry these weird curses around money. Either the scarcity curse, which I talked about earlier, which is I
Hmm.
cannot charge enough, no one will pay me what I'm worth. The
Hmm.
guilt curse, real artists don't care about money, wanting it wants me greedy. These curses
Hmm.
keep the bankruptor circling, but waiting for an opening. So, what's the money mindset shield that you teach that actually protects creative entrepreneurs? And how is it different from the traditional financial advice that doesn't work for creative minds?
Yes. I think and I don't know if it's still on my website because I wrote this article a long time ago, but for the longest time, my most popular blog post was why Dave Ramsey is bad for business. I'm
Yep.
kind of the anti Dave Ramsey. Um, I think Dave Ramsey's advice is really good for most individuals that are not self-employed.
Mm,
I don't. I'll just leave that there.
sure.
But there are some things that that it just, in my opinion, fall short and are lacking in his. Uh, I guess the only other thing I'll say is he's very dogmatic. Like it's this way or not, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of people need that. So like it, but to me, they have they haven't learned the principles. It's like, why are you doing this? Like,
Ah,
and in any case, back to the thing to protect yourself. I think the simplest solution um, to solving that, and you really don't even have to get over your own money mindset problems. Like if you don't think you're worth it, that's totally fine.
mm,
Like, like here's what you focus on. What is it worth to the buyer? Because the reality is that the buyer and the buyer only can determine price and value. You can't do it, right? So whatever is going on in your head is irrelevant.
hmm,
Yeah?
yeah.
The only person that can decide whether what you're providing is worth it is the person that's buying it. Okay. And so if you focus on what is the value to them of the solution you provide, then charge that because
Mm,
they're gladly going to pay this. I tell a story. I interviewed somebody on uh, the Profitable Creative a long time ago that told this story about how he dealt with it, and it's a he told this, and I'm like, oh my God. He was one of the OGs in podcasting, right? And so he started the podcast on Lost. He and his wife.
mm,
I don't remember his name, but podcasting started about the same time Lost came out, and they'd come on every week and they'd discuss the episode, and it became wildly popular. And then he started helping others with setting up their podcasting, right? And this was 20 years ago when
sure.
it was a lot harder to get a podcast going than it is now. And so he would sell them equipment, right, and help them get it set up. And somebody reached out to him and said, "I'm having a problem. Can you help me? I want to buy an hour of your time." And he goes, "Sure, yeah," and signed up for next week. They were going to meet the following week. And he started feeling guilty. He's like, I think I know what his problem is. And so he emailed the guy. He said, if there's a free support number with the manufacturer. If you call them, they can probably solve your problem for free.
Mm,
You know? He goes, "Yeah, thanks for that information. Still want to meet with you." So he meets with him and he gets on the call a little early, and the client's already on the call.
mm,
And he said, "Well, this is my problem." And instantaneously, he knew what the problem was. He said, "Here's what you need to do." And in 2 minutes, he'd fixed his problem. They hadn't even gotten to the scheduled time, right?
mm.
And he said, "Fantastic. Send me a bill." And he's like, "Well, I can't charge you." And he's like, "Why not?" He goes, "Well, we didn't take the whole hour and I've solved your problem in 2 minutes. I can't send you a bill." And he's like, "No, send me a bill." But it was a teaching moment for him to
Mhm.
realize that his time has nothing to do with the value perceived.
Correct.
In fact, the fact that he got it done in 2 minutes and didn't waste an hour of the guy's time increased his value, right?
Yep. Yep.
So you have to change your focus to the customer and leave. If you don't want to deal with your head trash, that's fine. I mean, like you can,
Sure.
but you don't even need to address it. Just ignore it. Don't listen to it. What is the person willing to pay you?
Hmm. Yeah, that number's always going to be higher. Uh,
Yes,
yeah,
usually.
absolutely. And what I like to tell people is because I work fast myself. That's one of the reasons I'm hired as often is because I am the expert and I work quickly. But people say like, how long does it take? I'm like, well, it took 50 years plus a week.
Yes.
50 years of learning how to do it in a week, to be able to do it. And then the actual week of me doing the work or the 2 minutes. That guy spent how many years learning all of this so that when somebody presented him a problem, he instantly knew because he's probably worked through that problem multiple times. And it's that experience is what you're paying for. It's not the actual minutes on the clock. We're not lawyers, it's like we're creative people. We're just like you want an expert to come in and give you the answer. There's a great story about Pablo Picasso sitting at a park bench. A woman comes up and
Yes.
goes, "You must be Pablo Picasso. Sketch my drawing." So he does a couple quick drawings, hands it over to her, and he goes, "That's $10,000." And she's like, "You're crazy. I'm not paying that. It's just a couple lines on the drawing." He's like, "No, it's not. That's my entire life to be able to do 2 lines on a drawing and make it look like you. $10,000.
Yes.
That's
The-
that's the value."
When I was new in business, a lot of times people came to us or still come to us and they haven't dealt with their accounting and taxes for several years, right? Um, this guy, this is the story that taught me this
Mm.
lesson. This guy, he said, "I've got all this to do. How much are you going to charge me to do it?" And I said, "Well, I'll charge you $100 an hour." He says, "That's outrageous. I don't even pay my lawyer $100 an hour." Now, obviously, this was a long time ago. Um,
Like, I need that lawyer. What are you talking
yeah,
about?
right. Um, and I said, "Okay." And then I did some quick thought in my head, like, how long could this possibly take to do in my head? And then I like did it at $200 an hour. And I said, "Well, it's going to be $2,000." He goes, "Oh, okay." I, right?
Yep.
That's the psychology of pricing, right? He was anchored on his lawyer and like, "I
Yep.
can't pay you more than my lawyer,"
Right.
right? But it was largely irrelevant because he was willing to pay more.
Right.
Exactly.
It's such a weird way to approach things. Absolutely a
Yes.
weird way to approach things.
Yes.
So, speaking of people you've spoken to, you've seen hundreds of creative entrepreneurs at this point. And if
Mhm.
you were to give them one piece of hard-won wisdom, the creative professional who's talented, getting clients, working their asses off, but still living quest to quest with the bankruptor breathing down their neck, what would it be? What's the one shield that they need to pick up first?
Well, I think the first one is mindset, but I think the second one is profit first. And here's why, because
Okay.
it is an uber simple tool any business owner can implement and understand that allows you to take that mindset and be intentional with your money.
Mm.
If you don't have the mindset first and you try and implement the tool, if you try to use the tool without changing your mindset, you're going to short circuit the tool. You're not going to use the tool correctly. You're going to say, "Well, I need some more money, so I'm going to pull it out of this account and I'll spend it anyway."
Mm.
Right? So the tool only works if you have the proper intent. And so start with your mindset and your intent and say, "I am going to have a profitable business." Um, and then use profit first to ensure that you have a profitable business.
So explain profit first, because we keep saying it. I see the beautiful book behind you that's also labeled Profit First.
Yes.
But explain it as simply as you can without going to it, because we obviously want them to buy your book here. But explain profit first, the mentality behind that.
Well, Mike developed this, and he admits it. He figured it out from watching his grandmother do the envelope system. And when her husband got a paycheck, she'd take it to the bank, she'd cash it, and then she had certain envelopes. Then she put certain amounts of money into it to pay for that certain expenses. So she'd have X amount in groceries, X amount in rent, et cetera, et cetera. And when that money was gone, you didn't spend any more. Yeah. And that's what profit first is with bank accounts. And
Mm.
so it's a process of staging your money, being intentional with purpose, allocating that into buckets. And when that money's gone, it's gone. You don't spend any more. You don't go rob this account to say, "Okay, we're gonna." No, but that's kind of my point. If you don't have the mindset and
Right.
and you put that in there, you're like, "Well, it doesn't really matter. I'll just take my money out of the profit account this time." It won't work.
Doesn't help. All right. Excellent. So, Christian, this has been an incredible conversation again. So you've given my listeners some real armor against the bankruptor. And I know there are people listening right now who are realizing that they too need to pick up those financial shields that we talked about. So before
Mhm.
we close the tavern doors for the night, tell our listeners, if someone's sitting there thinking, I need help managing my creative business finances before the bankruptor comes a knocking, or I want to learn more about these frameworks Christian teaches, where
Mhm.
should they go? What's the best way for them to continue this journey with you?
I would recommend buying the book. You can go to profit first, the number four creatives.com. Some jackass was squatting on the four FOR website and he wouldn't sell it to me. He wouldn't even answer my emails. Anyway, profit first for creatives.com. You can buy the book. Um, if you want to talk to me, it would be christianbrim.com. So,
Excellent, excellent. And all that information will be included in the show notes, obviously. And so here's the truth, fellow adventurers. Managing your gold is not selling out. It's not
mm-mm.
becoming a business person instead of a creative. Learning to read the story your numbers are telling you, that's one of the most creative acts of survival that you can master. Because the bankruptor doesn't care how talented you are, it only cares whether you're paying attention to the warning signs. So, Christian, thank you for sharing your hard won wisdom with us in the tavern. You've given people real tools to defend themselves tonight, and that matters. Safe
Thank you,
travels, my
Paul.
friend. Yep. Have a good one, and I appreciate you coming by the tavern.